Greetings and welcome to episode 18 of the Old Patrol HQ podcast. I am your host, Gil Maza. This podcast is dedicated to celebrating and preserving the history, heritage, and legacy of the Old Patrol through the words of those who lived it, with a few shenanigans along the way. Here is part 2 of the epic podcast episode with retired Associate Chief Gary Labbe as he relates to us for his first-hand account of the very first Bortac class. Yes, the story of Bortac 1 exclusively at Old Patrol HQ. Ain't no patrol like the Old Patrol. Honor first, honor always.
And then after that, we started getting training, because what they would do, the next class number 2, they would have all of us detailed down for the last few days of training of class number 2, and they did the same for class 3. So then some of the photos that I took are from some of those sessions when we responded. And like I said, they only did it for a couple of classes because Border Patrol finally wised up and decided to take control of the training. Because I think class 2, they only had 13 that made it through. And the same for class 3. Very few. A lot of them were weeded out. But from that point on, we were subject to call-outs. Like I mentioned before, we were getting called out all over the U.S. We actually had this huge duffel bag packed all the time. I carried it around the trunk of my car if I went on vacation with my wife and kids, or because we were subject. If they called, they wanted you to get on a plane and get down to wherever the mission was as soon as possible.
If I may interject here, you sent me a letter that was written on official Department of Justice letterhead, and it says basically September 27, 1984, to any airline ticket agent or airline pilot. This is to inform you that United States Border Patrol Agent Gary Labbe is a member of an official nationwide special response team. Because of the immediate call-out responsibilities, he must carry specialized equipment with him while en route to a training site or when responding to an emergency. He's authorized to carry a sidearm and a rifle or shotgun. All weapons will be carried unloaded in safe condition. If you have any questions regarding his travel, you may call, and then it's got the number 24 hours a day, and your inquiries will be answered by either the Chief Patrol Agent or Deputy Chief Patrol Agent, and then it's signed Douglas M. Crum, Chief Patrol Agent, Holton, Maine.
Yeah, that was Doug Crum.
Crum.
Doug was the chief of the sector at the time. Doug went on to become chief of the entire Border Patrol. And as a matter of fact, I was selected by him to come to headquarters as his associate down the road. I had that letter that I presented along with my ID. And back then, they weren't as stringent on airlines as they are today. I mean, I remember getting a call out. My wife had gone to the grocery store when I was living up there in northern Maine. I get a call out, and they said, Chrome North has erupted. You need to get down here now. And I had to leave my wife a note saying, I'm on my way to Florida. I'll call you when I can. So, she's gone for an hour at the grocery store, comes back with that note on the table.
Yeah, no husband, just gone.
It doesn't see me for the next 2 or 3 weeks. So that was how the conditions we were living under as Bortacers.
Yeah.
And again, the airlines, I remember at that time when they issued us Mini 14s, they failed to issue us gun cases. So we didn't have any gun cases. We had just been issued our Mini 14s when we got the call out to Chrome, one of the first call outs, and I had a garment bag, so I put the Mini 14 in my garment bag. And went to the airline counter carrying the garment bag, showed him the letter. they would escort me through security around, so I wouldn't have to go through the buzzer, or the metal detector, and I'd board the plane. Well, I boarded the plane like that, just having shown them the letter and my ID with a fully automatic Mini 14 and my sidearm, and I just hung the garment bag in the garment container. When you board the plane, there's a place for garment bags. I just hung it there, not wanting to bring it to the seat with me, right next to the pilots.
Oh,
and I almost felt like telling the pilots, "Hey, I just boarded one of your plane with a rifle, and there wasn't much security." But anyway, that was, we eventually got gun carrying cases. But yeah, I think everybody from all the sectors had similar letters to present to save any holdups. I mean, I remember flying when I went to sniper training in California. I remember flying with a 308 rifle and 1,000 rounds of ammo, in this metal boxes, and I flew down the road with some of the Bortacers that had plastic explosives.
Unbelievable.
They call them, trying to think, flashbangs.
Yeah, flashbangs.
Because we all carried flashbangs, and like I said, a few of the explosive experts actually carried plastic explosives. So like I said, things back then were a little looser than they would ever be today.
No
we
kidding.
would never have gotten away with any of that. Action.
Yep, and you sent me your certificate here from the San Diego County Sheriff's Department. It says certificate of completion of course. This is to certify that Gary H. Labbe has successfully completed a 40-hour training course under the direction of the training division entitled Basic Sniper Course, dated 25th of July, 1986.
Yep, there's another interesting little story behind that, that I'll briefly go into. I had been trained as a hostage negotiator, and like I said, that's the reason I joined Bortac. I wanted to take advantage of some of the training, and they actually sent me to Texas A&M University, and at the time it was called the Texas Academy for the Prevention and Control of Extraordinary Violence. And I'm looking at my certificate there in front of me. Successfully completed the course in hostage negotiations. After I took the hostage negotiations course, which was one of the best courses I've ever taken, they actually had video of live hostage situations, and it's really super training. The following year, they offered sniper training. So I thought, geez, I've been trained in hostage negotiations. Why don't I apply for sniper training? Now, I knew absolutely nothing about, sniper training or anything having to do with snipers. I'd grown up in northern Maine. I was familiar with rifles. I'd hunted deer. But that was the extent of it. And then they instructed the sector to provide us with a sniper rifle and a 1,000 rounds of 308 ammo. So at the time, the only rifle they could drum up was a 308 deer rifle, which, anybody familiar with snipers, it's not a sniper rifle.
Yeah.
But that's what I flew to California with. 1,000 rounds of ammo and a 308 deer rifle. Showed up at Bortac sniper training, which was being held at Camp Pendleton in your area, Gil, not far from San Clemente.
Yeah.
So and I'll name some of the guys that were with me here, because I've got a picture that I should have sent you, showing us there in California at sniper training. Dave Moody, I believe, was from Texas, TIC in New Mexico, I think. Bob Coleman. Bob later left the patrol and became the district director up in Seattle. Ron Colburn, Ron also was, in chief and in headquarters. And
I got to work with with him a little bit.
Did you?
Yes, and in headquarters, DC.
Yeah, I did. Ron was another one of the good guys and a good friend. Also in the photo is Jeff Calhoun. And again, Jeff, I think, was out El Centro, assistant commander Bortac down the road. And then Roy Wilson, and I think Roy came out of Montana. I'm not positive there. And then Timmy Cartner from Swanton Sector. Timmy was a character, and then Timmy has since, I think he passed on a couple of years ago. Tim had been helicopter pilot in Vietnam. Anyway, that was us. There were 7 of us showing up for Camp Pendleton, and the San Clemente agents met us at the airport and drove us to the Ramada Inn, and I believe is it I-5 or I-8 that's off of the...
I-5.
I-5, okay, the Ramada Inn off of I-5. We got there, most of us straggled in late evening. They put us up on the top floor, and unbeknownst to us, which we found out the following morning, Clint Eastwood and a whole bunch of actors were staying at the same Ramada, and were filming Heartbreak Ridge at Camp Pendleton, the movie Heartbreak Ridge. Well, we found out the next morning, we're all standing in the lobby getting some coffee, the elevator pops open, and off walks Clint Eastwood. And that's where we all recognized him. And he's got a girl with him. He had a young girlfriend at the time, I believe. Anyway, he walks off the elevator and just nods his head at us and keeps walking on. So I go up to the desk and I said, "Hey, what's going on?" They said, "Well, that's they're filming a movie here. That's Clint Eastwood and his crew." And the girl said, "We thought you guys were part of the movie. That's why we put you up on the top floor with them." I said, no. And at the time, we were all in camis and had our gun cases, and so they figured we were actors. They had no clue that we were part of a sniper team.
You were the real thing.
Yeah, right. So I can still, like I said, we went to sniper training that day, and the San Diego Sheriff's Office were the ones contracted to instruct us. Now, initially, it had been the LA SWAT team, but something happened in LA where things went south with their SWAT team. Somebody had taken a hostage at one of the high-end stores on Rodeo Drive, and I think they ended up shooting one of the hostages mistaken for the hostage takers. So anyway, they bowed out of our training because of all that bad publicity going on. So San Diego stepped in, which was actually to our benefit because the head sniper for the San Diego SWAT team was a deputy by the name of Grant Burnett. And I've since, watching cops over the years, I used to see Grant there. He'd be on cops.
Yeah.
He was a sergeant eventually. But Grant was married to the daughter of former Colonel McMaster, who had written the Marine Corps Sniper Manual. So he was there. The colonel retired, was actually there during our training, instructing us.
That's amazing.
So we got, like I said, superb Class A training. Jeff and Ron Colburn were in their room with the door open, and they would hone in with their sniper rifles on the traffic, just sighting in their rifles on the unloaded, of course.
Of course.
They would sight in on the traffic going by on I-5, and to this day I can still see Clint Eastwood come out of his room, walk by Ron and Jeff's room, stop and do a double take where he sees two guys in camis with sniper rifles honing in on the traffic, and Clint just kept going. He did a quick take and just headed for the elevator. So that, like I said, that was one of the more comical moments. Now, we were, the next morning, picked up by San Clemente agents, brought us over to San Clemente Station, and from there, we were taken to San Diego Airport, where a customs helicopter was going to take us into the foothills of San Diego in the backcountry to go through a sniper training session. Took us to the airport, to the helicopter, and I remember sitting in the helicopter with all the other guys and with Timmy Cartner. Like I mentioned, Tim had been a helicopter pilot in Vietnam, so he told us, So Tim looks over at the customs guy and he says, "Hey, can I take the controls?" Now, we're sitting on the runway of the San Diego airport with flights coming in and going out. And we all looked at each other, and we knew Tim. Like I said, Tim was a character.
Yeah.
And we thought, oh, God, this is a bad idea. We're sitting in the middle of a runway, and Tim's going to take the controls. So the pilot agrees to let him take the control.
Wow.
He takes the control, and he stalls the helicopter on the runway as there's a 747 coming in, bearing down. Oh my God, this is the end of our training. The pilot finally, jumped in and started the chopper and moved it out of the path, because we could hear the tower, helicopter or whatever number on the runway. Get the hell off the runway. There's an incoming flight. So that was, again, a comical memory here.
That is hilarious. There's always that one agent, right?
Pardon me?
I said there's always that one agent.
Oh yeah. Like I said, Tim was a character. He was a funny guy. I mean, he was always getting into some type of trouble.
Yeah.
But anyway, they take us out to the foothills of San Diego. We spend all day with Grant Burnett and a couple of the other deputies that I've got on that photo, and I'll forward you that photo.
Okay.
So you can probably publish it with all the guys on it. And they take us out to the foothills, and they say, okay, the mission is you guys are going to try and sneak up on this abandoned barn a mile away. And we've got targets set up in the barn. And you guys use whatever means you need to sneak up. We can't just go running up to the barn, because they said we've got spotters out there with binoculars, and if they spot you, you're dead. So we had to, like I said, practically, I think I crawled for over half a mile. I got to within sight of the barn, and I crawled through weed and brush and bramble and whatever till we were able to get within shooting distance to take out one of the targets. But that was our all day. We continued with other scenarios during the day. So anyway, it was pretty much of a long day where nobody had remembered to bring any food or anything. We had water, but we didn't have anything to eat.
Mm-hmm.
So we get back to the Ramada at night. It's late evening, and we're all starving, but the restaurants are closed. and there's no takeouts anywhere nearby, and we're all beat anyway. So I head up to my room, and there's a vending machine in the hallway. So I thought, great, at least I'll get a bag of chips or a candy bar,
Yeah.
So I only had about $1 in quarters. So I put the quarters in and pulled the knob, and as luck would have it, the machine malfunctions.
Of course.
So I'm standing there in front of the machine, and I hear the elevator door open. Now the elevator door opens, and it's Clint Eastwood carrying a tray of fruit. He's got 3 or 4 oranges, a couple of bananas. I guess he had snuck down to the kitchen and gotten something for him and his girlfriend. And as he's walking by carrying the tray, I'm kicking the hell out of the machine, trying to get my quarters back or the machine to give me a candy bar.
Yeah.
So again, I see him, he stops and just looks at me and just nods his head and keeps going, saying, what the hell is going on with these guys? First they're sniping in on traffic, and now this guy's kicking the hell out of machines. So anyway, long story short, goes back to his room. I go back to my room, and he had left 2 oranges outside his hotel door.
Oh, man.
I guess he felt sorry.
Wow.
So anyway, that's my Clint Eastwood story.
Oh my God! You didn't eat those oranges, did you?
Of course I did.
You didn't save them as souvenirs?
Yeah, I probably should have. But like I said,
Nah,
when you haven't eaten all day and you're going after midnight, I'll eat anything that is left for me.
Yeah, that's
Plus,
pretty
I didn't want to
damn.
insult him. I figured, hey, he's kind-hearted enough to feel sorry for me. I'm not gonna,
Yeah.
not eat his orange.
It's nice that he was that classy about it.
Oh yeah. He was, and then on top of that, we'd go out, do the sniper training during the day, come back in the early evening, and they'd have happy hour down at the Ramada Bar. So we got to drink with some of the crew, some of the lesser-known actors in Heartbreak Ridge.
Uh-huh.
Everybody but Clint Eastwood never came down to the bar, but he wasn't one to socialize much from what the actors were telling me, but they were socializers. So we got to drink, have a few beers. I remember sitting at the bar with the black African-American actor in Heartbreak Ridge.
Mario Peebles.
Played the gunnery sergeant, Moses Gunn. Real nice guy. I remember him telling me stories about Hollywood, and so that was another plus there, another blessing, and that we never expected. To meet up with these guys, and I eventually was able to watch Heartbreak Ridge, which was a pretty good movie.
Yep.
One of Eastwood's better movies.
Agreed.
Okay, let me try and wrap up here. I don't want to be boring people with all my stories, but I've still got a couple of incidents that I'd like to cover.
Yeah, trust me, sir. This hasn't been boring in the least. I mean, this has just been so. I am sitting here just beside myself, listening to all these details, and it's just amazing.
Yeah. Like I said, I've been blessed over the years to be part of incidents and situations, and just like I said, I'm glad that you're giving me the opportunity to pass some of this on, because it's things that I had been when I worked with a crew here in New Jersey with the Casino Control Commission. After I retired from the patrol, they kept telling me, "Jesus, write a book." They couldn't believe some of the stories that I had.
Yeah.
But this is better.
Well,
doing a podcast is a little easier.
well, this is pure Old Patrol gold. I think that any of us who will listen to this in the future are just going to be honored to be. Like I said, you're on. You said you were honored to be part of this whole of this of our agency and all the adventures and experiences you had, and I think that allows us to be proud too.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm just glad to be able to share some of it. And the other benefit is I'm starting to hear from old friends that I haven't heard from in decades. With the internet now and Facebook and everything, people have been getting in touch, which is good. I like to reconnect with old friends, so that's another blessing.
And I think after this
Anyway.
podcast, you're going to hear from a lot more of them.
Yeah. Anyway, let me get into one of the incidents that I had mentioned to you earlier,
Okay.
which is an incident that happened in 1985 in New Orleans Border Patrol sector, and it was referred to at the time, and it made national and international news. And the story behind it at the time wasn't really publicized, again, to protect agents involved and not stir up international incidents.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, this was referred to as the Medved incident. Now, Medved was a Soviet seaman. His first name was Miroslav Medved. He jumped ship in 85 from a freighter, a Soviet grain freighter named the Marshal Konev. This grain freighter was docked in New Orleans harbor. He attempted to gain political asylum and was picked up by the New Orleans Border Patrol. And according to reports now, he was ordered returned to the ship that same night.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the circumstances why he was ordered returned to the ship, because this is one incident I wasn't involved in. I did get the call, but I couldn't get down there fast enough. It was just a snowstorm in Maine, and there's no way I was flying out. So, But I did get the story from a few of the agents that were involved at the time. Now, after being returned to the ship, INS at the time and the State Department made plans to board the ship after local news broke, and the story soon became national news. Even the Attorney General, who at the time was Ed Meese, authorization for Bortac came from that high up to surreptitiously board the ship in the middle of the night or in the early morning hours to secure Medved and make things safe for the State Department. Because the State Department weren't really law enforcement type guys. They were more, I don't know how to describe it, more nerdish, book types or whatever, educated. So they weren't really law enforcement minded. So they didn't want to board the ship afraid of something may happen to them.
Yeah.
So Bortac did. Two or three of the agents, and like I said, I'm not going to name any agents because I don't want to give undue publicity to since there may have been agreements, confidentiality agreements signed on this whole incident. It was so broad in scope. But anyway, they boarded the ship using scuba gear in the harbor and make rappelling equipment with hooks and whatever. They were able to board the ship, and they located Medved in the hull of the ship. He was in a makeshift cell, and there were actually armed guards aboard that ship. And one of the things that again, this was a never verified, publicized. One of the things the Bortac agents noticed is there was a lot of sophisticated communications gear aboard a Soviet grain freighter.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at that time, the Soviet was known to be actively spying on us. And I think this was one of their spy ships that was docked in New Orleans harbor. Anyway, that morning, the State Department and the INS boarded the ship and obtained agreement from the ship's captain that Medved be re-interviewed and that they would be allowed to remove him from the ship and interview him away from the ship. So the ship's captain granted the request, naturally a lot due to the fact that Bortac was there.
Yeah.
He didn't want any confrontations, or especially, like I said, if there was something not quite kosher about the ship. So for 2 days, the State Department interviewed Medved, and according to the State Department, he withdrew his political asylum claim on the second day.
Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing that his family was probably threatened over in the Soviet Union. Long story short, they returned him to the ship the following day. They had a subsequent investigation, a Senate investigation. Turned out to be an exercise in futility. They had report after report filed, and then the matter was eventually closed. Medved was returned to the Soviet Union and never heard from again. So anyway, that, like I said, that's the backstory on the Medved incident. Okay, jumping ahead now, I'm going to go to the Atlanta penitentiary riots. That, again, was a national news story. If anybody Googles the Atlanta penitentiary riot, they'll see photos of the prison practically gutted. At the time, and this happened in November of '87.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, Atlanta Penitentiary was holding 1,500 Mariel boat lift Cuban inmates that had come over on the Mariel boat lift. A majority of them were criminals, mental cases. They decided to riot and revolt because they were told that they were being returned to Cuba, which is the last place they wanted to go back to, because they had already been released from prisons and mental institutions there in Cuba, boarded onto boats and allowed to come to the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
So they decided to set fire. The fire started in a broom factory. Now, why in God's name that they had a broom factory in a penitentiary, I have no clue. But it's an ideal place to burn the penitentiary down.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. During the riot, one inmate was shot dead. 5 others were shot by prison guards who were overreacting to the riot at the onset. The FBI HRT team was called up along with the Marshal SOG unit, with the Bortac units. This was a big incident that needed all hands on board.
Mm-hmm.
And naturally, whenever the FBI is involved, they take the lead, whether you want them to or not.
Yeah.
So, in all my dealings with the FBI over the years, I found they're always in the front of the pack and the first ones to be in the news. And,
yes. So all the movies are right.
Pardon me?
I said, so all the movies are true.
Yeah. Yeah. When I do the podcast on headquarters, I'll reveal an incident with the FBI that I worked on my last week at the headquarters, which involves a serial killer, Rosendo Ramirez, the railway killer.
Yeah.
I've got a great story there and documentation on the FBI trying to screw over the Border Patrol. Anyway,
looking forward to it.
Off course here. During the penitentiary riots, naturally, we're all called up. Now, they sent me and a few Swanton sector SWAT team agents. At that time, the sectors had started organizing their own SWAT teams to handle things locally. Swanton was one. When I got back to Holton, I formed a SWAT unit there. The chiefs were more comfortable with that, not wanting to call Bortac out for every little incident that happened.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, like I said, they detailed myself and a few Swanton sector team agents, and I think Timmy Gardner was part of that too, Timmy and I. Timmy had been in class number 2 of Bortac.
Okay.
Anyway, they flew us to Dulles International Airport and staged us on the outskirts in a local motel, awaiting further instructions in case things really went to hell in Atlanta, which they were destined to.
Mm-hmm.
We would be called up to back up the on-scene Bortackers and prepare for a mass assault on the prison. Now, if there had been a mass assault, I probably wouldn't be here, because we got intel reports that these guys were hardcore. Some of them were armed. They had seized 35 hostages, prison guards, prison secretaries, prison workers. So they had 35 hostages, and they had hooked up jury-rigged propane tanks at different places in the prison, wired to blow up if there was an assault. So they were, like I said, they were experienced, they were organized.
Yeah.
So we weren't looking forward to being called down there. Fortunately, again, the Attorney General's office got involved. The hostage negotiators told the ringleaders of the inmate that a moratorium had been imposed by INS and the State Department on any deportations back to Cuba, and that the government would set up Cuban review panels to review each case individually. So the inmates agreed to that. They knew that they better agree to something, because, like I said, they knew that there was a mass assault being prepared, and during a mass assault, as we saw at Attica, when the prison guards start shooting, nobody survives. So
yes.
Anyway, they wisely decided to release the hostages, surrendered after they were granted an interview on national news. And that's when we were ordered to stand down, which was a big relief to all of us. Anyway, as a result of that, they detailed 5 of us after the incident, after the penitentiary burning. They transferred the ringleaders to Chrome North in Miami, the detention center there.
Mm-hmm.
And Chrome North was equipped to handle these guys, but there had been riots there before. We had been down there 4 or 5 times over the last couple of years to handle Haitian and Cuban rioters. So they decided we can't leave these guys at Chrome North. It's not secure enough. So let's have Bortac transport them to a remote location somewhere where they won't be any problem or won't have any chance at rioting. So they detailed 5 of us to Miami. I'm trying to remember who was part of that, and again, my memory fades sometimes, because that was a very stressful, hectic detail. I remember John France being part of the team. Anyway, we all met down in Miami. We had a detention bus with a detention officer driving. We loaded the bus with the hardcore rioters, and were told that we were taking them to Lafayette, Louisiana. Now, the sheriff in Lafayette, Louisiana had just built a brand new jail. And it was a jail like I've never seen before. It was a modern, cylindrical type jail, 10 stories, and it was all just like looking at a big cylinder.
Mm-hmm.
Huge 10-story jail. Government had contracted the sheriff there to take those Cubans at, I think there was $50 a day for each inmate. And we had a bunch of inmates. They were there indefinitely. As far as I know, they died there. There may even still be some there. Anyway, we loaded them on the bus, and like I said, I think there was 4 or 5 of us Bortacers, armed, armed with shotguns, and they had a cage on the bus, and the only thing the bus didn't have was a restroom. So naturally, we had to stop at rest stops to let them use the bathroom. It was a long drive.
Wow.
So I remember coming into the Louisiana border, and decided to pull over into a rest stop. Now, we had noticed that there were 4 or 5 pickups following the detention bus with Louisiana plates,
Yeah.
So we pulled in, and these 4 or 5 pickups pulled right in alongside of us, and they're all backcountry folk from Louisiana with shotgun racks and shotguns and whatever. And they see us get off the bus, and they approach us, and they say they could see the Cubans on board, and the Cubans were loud, and they were trying to break windows on the bus, and they were being, trying to riot and whatever. And, so one of the guys just walks up to me, and he says, "Where are you taking them boys?" And I'm thinking, geez, I better not tell them we're leaving them here in Louisiana.
Yeah.
So I says, we're headed to Michigan. I says, we're taking them up to a prison in Michigan. He says, good deal. Good deal. He says, they can freeze their butts off up there. He says, so anyway, that was, like I said,
wow.
our encounter with the locals. We kept on going. We get to the Lafayette, Louisiana new jail, and the warden there is a young female in her 30s. She meets us at the bus with 10 or 12 deputies ready to put the shackles on the Cubans. They were already in handcuffs anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, this is a good deal for us. She says, we'll be able to pay for our jail. And she says, we're going to put them all on the 10th floor. And she says, they can work their way down with good behavior.
Wow, that's a warden.
Into the jail, up to the 10th floor, should try and work their way down over the coming years.
Wow, that's a good warden.
Yeah, and the Cuban review panels did become part of the process. For a few years, I participated where I went to different detention centers to actually interview the Cubans, hold review panels, decide whether or not they needed either be returned to Cuba or be released. At the time, Castro had agreed to take a plane load of them, and I think that eventually fell through. But the Cuban review panels went on for a couple of years, and as far as I know, nobody was ever released after the panels, because they just got worse being incarcerated.
Yeah.
I mean, they had burned Atlanta Penitentiary down, so they weren't going to be out for good behavior anywhere else.
No.
And like I said, eventually, over the next few years, another place that we were detailed to was St. Elizabeth Hospital in Washington, D.C. That's where they had put all the mental patients from that Mariel boat lift.
Oh.
And over the years, we were called there to make sure when things appeared that they might riot, we were called there to stand by for a few weeks. So I went down there at least 3 or 4 times to St. Elizabeth. And at the time, I'm trying to think of the guy that had tried to kill Reagan. He was, obsessed with the actress there, Jodie.
Yeah, Jodie Foster, yeah.
Anyway, he was an inmate there at St. Elizabeth when we were there. And we'd often see him roaming the grounds. He wasn't kept locked up or anything. They were allowed to roam around. And I remember him chasing nurses over there from the institution. Like I said, that was another ongoing detail that cost the government millions and millions of dollars, detailing us every other month for 30 days.
Was it John Hinckley, right?
Yeah.
John Hinckley Jr.
John Hinckley, yeah. I can still see him. He was just a little guy with glasses, and I can still see him out there running around on the lawn. They weren't too worried about him. He had accomplished what he wanted to do. That was a good place for him. But after a while, when we started going back to St. Elizabeth's, it started getting harder and harder to tell the inmates from the staff. Because I think what they were doing, after they decided to release some of the inmates, they kept them on as staff, which we found a little curious.
Yeah.
That some of these guys had been there for a few years, and I guess they figured they were rehabilitated, and they were going to keep them on. And we actually had one incident that I had heard of where Catholic Charities got involved in adopting some of these mental patients, and they had 3 nuns up in Michigan that adopted one of the more dangerous inmates, and he ended up killing all 3 of them.
Jeez.
After he got up to Michigan. So, these guys weren't the type of guys you wanted to adopt because you felt sorry for them, Anyway, again, let me wrap up here, Gil, just mentioning the book that I had told you about.
Mm-hmm.
There's a book called Cold Zero, and it's written by Special Agent Christopher Whitcomb. Christopher Whitcomb was the lead sniper on the FBI hostage team, HRT team. And the reason I mention the book is that he came on a detail with us in Arizona, along the Arizona-Tucson-Nogales drug corridor. At the time, Bortac was being tasked with actually ambushing drug runners coming up from Mexico along that corridor because it was getting real bad. Chris had never heard of Bortac, much less the Border Patrol, but he agreed to go on the detail with his partner. And he's got a great chapter in the book on his mission with Bortac. So I recommend it to anybody. It's a great book. You can still pick it up for a few bucks, I'm sure, because it's been out a few years.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, Cold Zero, a great read. It covers his career as a sniper. Starts off when he was a sniper in Puerto Rico, and then, like I said, basically anybody that reads the chapter on, and I don't want to go into it because it's too involved and too extent, but Chris mentions a few of us by name who were there with him, but he only mentioned us by first name to protect our identity, I guess, part of his writing the book. But but he does, like I said, he does mention me by my first name, and a couple of the other guys, Bob Coleman, and so it's, like I said, it's really a good read. And what I'll do, Gil, is I'll make copies when I get to the library. I'll make a copy of that chapter on the copying machine and send it to you.
Okay, so that'd be great.
You can get a little background. And the term cold zero, for all the non-snipers out there, refers to the cold barrel of a sniper rifle when you take your first shot. The point of aim and the point of impact align, and this is your zero. The one shot you get at finishing a job. It means truth and finality. You can practice until your barrel glows red hot, but the cold zero, that first irrevocable pull of the trigger, is the only statement anyone will remember. And I'm reading verbatim from Chris's book here.
Okay.
Like I said, it's a great read. I recommend it to anybody, and especially for the Bortacers out there who want to see what the drug interdiction missions were like back then.
Yeah.
Where we were actually allowed to ambush people, which I'm sure would probably be unheard of today. Would probably get a lot of bad publicity, but hey, drug smugglers were armed, and as we found out with the agent, Bortac agent Brian Terry, I believe who was killed by drug smugglers. That should pretty much wrap up. One last thing here. I've got an article from the Miami Herald, which was published when we showed up at Chrome North. And that day we showed up at Chrome North, back then Bortac had issued us 30-pound flak jackets, which are not the most comfortable thing in the world. And so we all donned our flak jackets because there was a full-blown riot going on outside Chrome. Haitian activist, the Reverend Jean Jus, was leading about 100 rioters threatening to break into Chrome and free the Haitians that were locked up in there. Let me just briefly read the article from the Miami Herald. It's entitled, Elite Riot Team Sent to Chrome. 2 escapees nabbed, 3 still on the loose. The elite contingent of 25 U.S. Border Patrol veterans trained for riot control marched into the Chrome Avenue detention camp in West Dade Saturday to prevent the recurrence of Thursday night's mass escape. And that's when we were activated, when they had a mass escape. Now, Friday night, federal immigration officers captured 2 more of the 24 escapees, leaving only 3 still at large. The Border Patrol tactical team, Bortac, is routinely brought in to quell disturbances at alien detention centers across the United States. They're men who have worked along the long U.S. border from Texas to California, in the rugged desert mountains and along the Canadian border, says Perry Rivkin, District Director of the INS in Miami. They're specially trained to handle large mobs. The Bortac unit was last called to Chrome in April when 100 detainees stripped off their orange jumpsuits, brandished rocks, and refused to come out of their barrack. When they marched in, that camp suddenly was subdued. Rifkin said, the way they marched, it was an absolutely remarkable toning effect on those who cause disturbances. People know they mean business, and they do. The Bortac officers, equipped with riot gear, will supplement Chrome's full-time security force of 28 detention officers and 120 Wells Fargo private security guards. The INS REACT team responds to all disturbances at Chrome. But the special REACT quad is much smaller than the Bortac unit. That's why they called in Bortac. They had their own team, but preferred having us down there.
Yeah.
The Bortac team, it goes on to mention, the only unit of its kind in the Border Patrol will remain at Chrome indefinitely. And we did remain there for a few weeks. Maintained order. One of the advantages I had was I'm a native French speaker. Mm-hmm. Having been raised in an ethnic French community in northern Maine, I could communicate with the Haitians. Even though their French is a patois, they still understood commands and orders that I gave them. And the more educated Haitians, the ones that had been educated by Catholic missionaries, spoke good French, good enough for me to communicate with them. So that helped in negotiations there. Anyway, I just wanted to read that just to give you a brief idea of what Bortac faced there going down to Chrome. And this is the first article, to my knowledge, that ever publicized Bortac. It was 1985, I believe, when we went down there. So
wow. Yeah.
I'll send you a copy of that too if you want it for your records.
Well, thank you very much, sir. You know what? I truly appreciate that. First of all, that all the information that you put together, it was a lot of hard work on your part. I can tell that. But the thing that you seem to be able to do really well throughout these podcasts is that you bring us right into that situation. It's almost like we're standing right there with you, watching the bullets fly and the push-ups get done and run, all that stuff. I mean, the way you so vividly remember everything is just an amazing ride.
Yeah, well, I surprised even myself, too, because most of the time I got a hard time remembering what I did yesterday.
Yeah.
So, much less all these years ago. So, like I said, I surprised myself, and it's a joy to do something like that after being retired for 20 years now, 20
mm-hmm.
years plus. It's good to be able to talk about these things, to relay it, to pass it on. So I really appreciate the effort that you're making in getting these stories out.
Well, thank you very much, sir. I appreciate this very much, and until our next podcast, I thank you so much for your service and everything you were willing to share with us today.
Well, you're very welcome, Gil. Thank you, and God bless you.
This concludes part 2 of episode 18, our interview with retired Associate Chief Gary Labbe and the history of Bortac 1. Thank you so much for listening to the Old Patrol HQ podcast. If you're a mind to, please take a look at all our official Old Patrol gear offered exclusively at Old Patrol HQ. Go to Old Patrol HQ at bigcartel.com and bring your pocketbook. Also, ratings are the name of the game for these podcasts, so if you wouldn't mind going to Apple Podcasts and giving us a rave review and 5 stars. Until our next episode, remember, ain't no patrol like the Old Patrol. Honor first, honor always.